He was Rocky Dennis, a boy who carried the physical form of a cruel medical tragedy with a disfigured face, yet possessed a radiant heart powerful enough to soothe anyone who crossed his path. Sentenced at the age of 2, with a grim prognosis that predicted blindness, intellectual impairment, and that he would not survive past the age of 7, he nevertheless bent the very limits of medicine to live a life of resilience, quiet composure, and remarkable kindness for 16 full years. But behind that extraordinary miracle were storm-filled days that few had the courage to speak about. And only recently did his mother, Rusty Dennis, finally speak about the detail that leaves anyone who hears it with a tightening in their chest, a submerged truth that never appeared on screen and that Hollywood never dared to touch. So what, in the end, was it? Rusty Dennis once said in an interview, her voice raspy, yet her eyes blazing as if determined to stand against the entire world, "My son is not a monster. My son is a miracle sent by God to teach people how to love." And to understand the miracle Rusty was speaking of, we must return to the very beginning, to the place where a child was born, unaware that he would one day become a light for countless others. Born on a cool December morning in 1,961 inches, Glendora, California, he was called Rocky not because of any innate toughness, but because as a baby he would only sleep peacefully when someone held him close and gently rocked him. Rocky entered the world like a warm, gentle kitten, adorable and completely ordinary, until life quietly shifted in another direction. His early years passed with recurring ear infections, nasal congestion, and lingering sinus problems that everyone assumed were nothing more than common childhood ailments. No one realized that behind those seemingly familiar symptoms, Rocky's body was silently battling an abnormal change taking place within his own skull. The truth was revealed only when Rocky was 2 years old and preparing for a tonsillectomy. The X-ray taken that day left everyone stunned. The bones inside his skull were abnormally thickened, bulging outward as if attempting to claim every remaining inch of space. The days that followed became a series of prolonged examinations at UCLA Medical Center, where doctors struggled to find answers for what was happening to this small boy. At last, they called Rocky's mother, Rusty Dennis, a woman with fiery red hair and an unwavering spirit, into the room to deliver the diagnosis. Rocky had craniodiaphyseal dysplasia, a rare and severe disorder. Along with that name came a devastating prediction. He might not live to see 7 years old and would gradually lose his eyesight, with a significant risk of intellectual developmental delays. Yet Rusty did not react in the way most would imagine a mother might upon hearing such news. She did not break down in tears. She did not collapse. She simply stood there, her blue eyes strangely calm, looked straight at the doctors, and said in a gentle but steady voice, "Even if my son is different, I will stand by him, and I will revisit this." From that moment on, Rocky's future was no longer confined within grim medical forecasts. It belonged to a mother who believed her son deserved another chance, and she chose to use every ounce of her strength, love, and faith to rewrite his journey one day at a time, in a way that was gentle yet never surrendering. At 6 years old, Rocky stepped into the doorway of school with eyesight that had already begun to blur day by day. He often had to press his face close to the pages of a book, straining to see through the thin veil that clouded his vision, yet he never complained. Rocky patiently sounded out words, piecing together letters slowly, as if carefully laying each brick to build the foundation of his future. That persistence quickly drew the attention of his teachers, because the boy with the unusual face absorbed lessons with remarkable speed. Rocky learned with all his remaining senses, from the steady timbre of his teacher's voice to the streaks of light drawn across the chalkboard each morning, storing every detail carefully within his heart. At first, his classmates were hesitant because of Rocky's appearance, but he did not allow that distance to linger. With natural gentleness, he greeted them with a smile and answered their curious questions calmly. Even when he heard awkward remarks that might have wounded someone else, Rocky responded only with kind eyes. He chose kindness as a way to soften discomfort, and gradually his peers no longer saw a different face. They saw a good friend. Rusty would later recount those years with a tightness in her throat that time never managed to ease. "You don't know what it feels like to see people look at your child like he's some strange creature." Children laughed. Adults avoided him. Some even asked me right in front of him, "What's wrong with him?" Then she told of an evening she never forgot, when Rocky looked up at her in confusion and asked, "Am I scary, Mom?" Rusty squeezed her son's hand and spoke with all the tenderness she could gather within herself. "No, my love, you are not scary. You only frighten people because they don't yet have the courage to look deeper." And perhaps it was from words like those that Rocky found the strength to walk into his classroom each day with bright eyes and an open heart, even when the world did not always know how to treat a child like him with gentleness. On some days, the dull ache in Rocky's head made his hands tremble as he held a piece of chalk, yet he still patiently stood at the board to explain the lesson again to a friend. He would only let out a quiet sigh of relief when the math problem was finally solved, his eyes still shining with that familiar determination. On weary mornings, Rocky would often tell a small joke, and suddenly the whole classroom seemed to brighten. He sowed joy in his own way, the way he would open his pencil case and share with each classmate simply because he wanted everyone to draw together. Outside the classroom, Rocky refused to let illness narrow his joy for living. Every Halloween, he became the leader of the neighborhood children, inventing themes, sketching out routes, assigning roles, and eagerly guiding the group forward in laughter. Wrapped in an oversized cape, Rocky seemed to carry the very energy of the night with him, and anyone who looked at him couldn't help but feel a little happier. By the summer of his 13th year, Rocky took his first trip to a camp for children with special circumstances. There, he found a gentle sense of belonging, a place where no one looked at him with curiosity or awkwardness. Everyone was a child carrying their own differences, yet united by the same need to be understood. Rocky blended in so quickly that even he was surprised. Within just a few days, he became the person every child wanted to be near. He knew how to ease homesickness with a funny story, how to calm childish arguments, and how to patiently listen to small sorrows that were hard to put into words. When summer ended, a counselor handed him 3 certificates: Best Friend, Kindest Friend, and Greatest Friend. For Rocky, they were not trophies to display, but quiet affirmations that he had lived true to what he wanted to become. Someone who shared, who brought comfort, and whose soul never allowed the limits of his body to dim his love for life. Over time, the illness continued its silent work on Rocky's body. His skull thickened, his face gradually changed, and his vision narrowed little by little. Yet as his physical strength declined, another strength grew within him, a calm acceptance and an unyielding will not to surrender. Rocky understood that he could not choose the body he was born into, but he could choose how to live within it. Because of that belief, he never allowed the daily pain to take away his hunger for learning or his initiative in life. As he grew older, Rocky's composed nature became even more evident. From a child once predicted to struggle intellectually, he gradually became the one classmates turned to for help with their studies. A small corner of the living room transformed into a study space, where Rocky spread out books across the table and charged $3 an hour for tutoring. The amount was not about earning money, but a way to remind himself that his effort had value. Friends came not only to solve math problems, but to find someone who truly listened. He did not comfort them with cliches, but with patience and understanding, helping them see that everyone carries their own trials, and that the important thing is not to let those trials change who you are inside. High school brought greater challenges. The academic demands grew heavier, while Rocky's body grew more exhausted by the day. Sometimes the pain forced him to stay home. Other times he came to class with swollen, heavy eyes. Yet whenever a teacher called his name, Rocky answered clearly and firmly, as if to say he was still here, still trying every single day. That alone made people cherish his presence even more. By his senior year, Rocky completed his studies with results that left even the skeptics silent. His graduation ceremony was as simple as he was no noise, no fanfare, just a boy standing in the schoolyard, diploma in hand, smiling gently beneath the fading afternoon sun that fell across a face that had endured so many trials, yet still retained its quiet grace. Watching from a distance, Rusty later said her heart felt squeezed by happiness. People saw a boy graduating, but a mother saw a miracle. He stood there, small but stronger than anyone. I'm proud not because he overcame illness, but because he walked the entire path with his own smile. Rocky Dennis's teenage years were not long, but they were marked by strength and a rare composure. He passed through them without bitterness, without seeking pity, gently sharing that everyone must eventually face crossroads that shape them into who they become. No one knew where his future would lead, but anyone who ever met Rocky felt the warmth he left behind. It was the light of a soul that never demanded life favor him, yet was always willing to give more than he possessed. Life moved quietly on like that until the final days of 1978. The resilient teenager eventually had to use a wheelchair. The legs that once stepped forward carefully now gave way to long stretches of stillness as he braced himself against increasingly severe headaches. These were not passing pains, but a heavy pressure from bone growth that continued to expand, compressing nerves and gradually narrowing his vision, memory, and clarity of mind. Yet Rocky kept his habit of enduring in silence. Not because he did not feel pain, but because he understood that complaining would not make him healthier, nor would it ease the worries already weighing on his mother's heart. He chose to face it calmly, as he always had. Rusty once said, "I watched him in pain and felt my heart tearing apart, but he always smiled, as if he wanted to comfort me more than comfort himself." On the night of the 3rd of October, 1978, family members and a few close friends took Rocky out for dinner. Everyone understood that time was short, so they only wished to give him a peaceful evening. No medications, no machines, just the presence of those who loved him. Sitting in his wheelchair, his body exhausted, Rocky still wore his familiar smile, the kind that seemed meant to ease others more than to speak of his own suffering. Beneath the soft yellow lights, he shared small stories and asked about each person, though in his eyes there lingered a faint weariness, as if he were preparing to lay down a burden he had carried for far too long. When they returned home, Rocky gently lifted his hand to his temple, a familiar gesture whenever pain arrived. Seeing this, Rusty placed her hand on his shoulder and whispered the words that had followed them for years. "Go into your room and rest. You know what to do." It was not merely advice, but faith, her belief that Rocky possessed the strength to soothe the pain in his own way. He listened, went into his room, and lay down on his bed, letting his body relax after a long day. That night was the last time the world saw Rocky awake. The next morning, around 6 o'clock, Rusty heard a faint sound from his room, like the shift of a blanket or a quiet turn in bed. She was accustomed to Rocky enduring pain silently, so she did not rush in. Only when sunlight filled the small house in Covina, around 10 o'clock, did she step inside. Rocky lay there, looking like a boy lost in deep sleep after a tiring night. But in a single glance, Rusty understood that what she had always feared had finally come. On the 4th of October, 1978, Rocky Dennis passed away in his sleep at the age of 16. He had lived 9 years longer than doctors had predicted, nearly twice as long as they once believed possible. After his passing, Rusty brought Rocky's body to the UCLA Genetic Research Center. Even in death, his body continued its mission to serve medical science in the hope that future children would not endure the pain he had known. When the research was completed, Rocky was cremated quietly and peacefully, just as he had lived and just as he had left. That evening, standing before the bedroom door that still held the lingering warmth of her son, Rusty whispered into the darkness as if speaking to it directly. "You left so gently, that I didn't even have a second to hold you back." She understood that Rocky had kept an unspoken promise to leave this world in the most peaceful way possible, not amid the cold machines of a hospital, not in cries of agony, and not under the gaze of pity. He chose to go with the same gentleness with which he had lived, quiet, light, yet leaving those behind forever unable to forget him. Rocky slipped into his final sleep in the way he had always hoped, for a place where no pain could reach him anymore. A few years later, that short life was brought to the big screen in the film Mask, and the world learned for the first time about the teenager with the gentle smile and a heart larger than any physical limit. But behind that cinematic glow was a truth few people ever saw. Rusty Dennis, the mother who told her son's story, received only a bitterly small sum of money. Money she used almost entirely to pay for the treatment of Joshua, her eldest son, who was fighting AIDS. No fame, no share of the spotlight, just a mother continuing to save whatever she still could. And from that moment, it became clear that the story no longer ended with Rocky. It opened into another chapter, the chapter of the woman who had lived through a whole lifetime of rebellion, pain, and love in order to keep her son living as brilliantly as possible. Florence Rusty Tullis was born in 1,936 inches Brooklyn, a place where the alleys were narrower than a child's dreams, and where life gave no one the time to be weak. In a working-class Jewish family, between cracked brick walls and the constant blare of truck horns day and night, Rusty grew up in the only way that neighborhood allowed: be strong or disappear. No one taught her to be tough. Circumstances did. No one told her to be hard as nails. Life forced her to be. At just 13, Rusty was expelled from school for skipping too often. But it wasn't because she was bad. It was because school was too small for a soul that always wanted to break out of every mold. By 14, she started smoking marijuana and running with local motorcycle gangs. Tattooed men, engines roaring like thunder straight into her chest, roads without a single promise. All of it became the first world where Rusty truly felt she belonged. By 15, Rusty quit school for good and became a hoochie-coochie dancer at Coney Island. Under dim lights mixed with cigarette smoke, amid rumbling music and applause that you couldn't tell was mocking or admiring, Rusty learned a hard lesson. Sometimes, to survive at the edge of darkness, you don't need anyone to lift you up. You only need to not fall. That stretch of life forged in Rusty a grit as sharp as a blade, rough but real, and later on, not even the greatest tragedies of her life could grind down that core. Rusty's love life was as intense as the way she lived. At 17, she married Tommy Mason, a truck driver like her father, and gave birth to her first son, Joshua. But a marriage that comes fast can leave just as fast. When it fell apart, Rusty returned to her parents' home, carrying her little boy in her arms, looking like a young warrior who had just walked off a battlefield but still had fire in her eyes. Not long after, she met Roy Dennis. He took her from Brooklyn to California, a land of sun, dust, and open space, as untamed as the part of her temperament that had never been domesticated. There, in 1961, Rocky was born. No one could have imagined that the red-faced newborn would later become a symbol of courage that moved an entire nation. But one thing was certain: Rocky was born to a mother who never smiled politely at fate, a mother who was always ready to fight it, hand to hand. Before Rocky was swept into pain and endless x-rays, Rusty already had a philosophy of life that was hard as steel, yet deeply human. If someone is strong enough to knock you down, then you are also strong enough to stand back up. Rusty didn't read philosophy, didn't quote books. She simply existed that way, and she raised Rocky in exactly that spirit. But you can't speak of Rusty only in her role as a mother. She was a real biker, a member of Turk, a motorcycle gang that Hollywood would never have the courage to portray truthfully. Tattooed, rough, seasoned men who lived by loyalty like a blood oath, they did not treat Rusty as an outsider. She stood in the same line with them, needing no special favors, offering no self-lowering humility. She was respected for words that burned like fire, for a bluntness with no sugar added, for a presence that made anyone understand she was the kind of person who would go all the way, no matter how terrifying the road became. Rusty drank. Rusty used drugs. And Rusty never apologized for it. When reporters came looking and tried to turn her into a victim of society, Rusty brushed all of that away with a single sentence. "I've always partied. Drugs are just part of that life." A statement so clean and final there was no space for pity to slip in. Rusty never needed anyone's comforting pat on the shoulder. She lived the way she chose, no hiding, no polishing, no fear of judgment. If Rocky inherited anything greatest from his mother, it wasn't a tough personality or stubbornness. What he truly received was a lion-hearted spirit, a lion's heart, the very thing that helped him outlive a disease that should have ended his life before it even had the chance to begin. Rusty wasn't perfect, but she was real. She wasn't clean, she wasn't conventional, she didn't try to become a symbol. And precisely because of that, she became one of the most unforgettable, real-life figures Hollywood has never been capable of fully capturing. When Mask premiered in 1985, Hollywood draped a dazzling halo over the story of a mother and son who had once lived quietly amid the dusty roads of California. Cher became Rusty, Eric Stoltz carried Rocky's face onto the screen, and the film instantly became a major hit, earning more than $48 million. And yet behind that success, Rusty received only $15,000, a tiny figure, compared with how much the film drew from her life. But what made that amount heavy was something else. Rusty used almost all of it to cover hospital bills for Joshua, her eldest son, who was battling AIDS in cold, sterile hospital rooms. She didn't sell Rocky's story in exchange for fame. She did it to hold on to the life of another child. When the media rushed in, expecting gratitude or a few emotional tears, Rusty merely shrugged and said a line that made all of Hollywood fall silent. "It's just a fairy tale." Not sarcastic, not furious. Simply the truth from a woman who understood her son too well and was too tired of the way the world likes to make everything prettier than it ever really was. Rusty appreciated that the film inspired children with disabilities, praised Cher's performance, but she couldn't hide her surprise that she herself had become the center of the story. In her eyes, Rusty was only Rocky's mother, not a character written to stand under spotlights. What she could not accept were the things left behind outside the frame. Joshua, the eldest son, who had lived beside her through all the hardest years, disappeared completely from the screenplay, as if real life could simply cut away whatever didn't fit a neat storyline. And then there was the music, something as important to Rocky as anyone in his life. Rocky loved Bruce Springsteen so much he could mention him in almost any conversation. Yet that music was replaced with Bob Seger simply because the studio couldn't buy the rights. Rusty heard the news, went quiet for a moment, then said softly, so softly it almost sounded like nothing but sharper than any criticism could ever be. "I don't think Rocky even knows who Bob Seger is." It wasn't until 2004, when Rocky had been gone for more than 2 decades, that Springsteen's music was finally returned to Rocky's story in the director's cut. A belated correction, but enough to remind people that what Hollywood tells is always only an arranged version of the truth. Rocky and Rusty's lives were never as tidy as a 2-hour movie. They were rougher, more chaotic, and beautiful in a raw way that cinema can never hold intact. Perhaps that is exactly why the real-life story of mother and son reaches into the deepest corners of the human heart, far beyond any glossy footage. When Hollywood's velvet curtain falls, When smoothly trimmed scripts give way to bare truth, we finally see clearly what Rusty always believed. Rocky did not exist, only in 2 short hours on a screen. He lives on in every heart set ablaze by his own journey. Rocky Dennis's legacy is not sealed inside lifeless photographs in a research institute, not contained in school medals, and certainly not tethered to a film. His true legacy lies in the way he soothed broken souls, in the way he made people feel lighter as they faced their own pain. Even though his time on Earth was painfully brief, the way Rocky walked through this life, calm, kind, and without a single word of resentment, cast a light more enduring than any medical prediction. With his own hands, he opened a new lens, redefining how the world looks at children with disabilities. That difference was never a sentence. It was simply another form of beauty, waiting to be understood by fair eyes and hearts generous enough to embrace it. Now, when people mention Rocky Dennis, they do not remember only the character Cher held with a sorrowful gaze on screen. They carry in their bones and memory a normal boy who used his abnormality to live an extraordinary life. They remember a courage that did not pound its chest, did not show off with grand spectacle, yet still had the power to shake the heartbeat of anyone it touched. Rocky's road may have been short, but the torch he left behind can pierce through the darkest layers of prejudice and fear. And for Rusty Dennis, the tough, thorny mother who stood behind her son, shielding him from every storm, Rocky's legacy was not merely fragments of memory. It was the support that let her keep living, the faith that allowed her to speak proudly to life itself, that there are lives, fragile as morning dew, yet burning so brightly that no darkness can ever put them out. Rocky's life was not long, but it was long enough to light up even the darkest prejudices. If this video leaves any echo in your heart, please support the channel with a like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for always staying with us and watching. See you again in the next videos.